So, about a week ago, I bought this 1969 Honda CL450. It is a complete bike. I've just started to take it apart already because I'm excited to work on it. I've never ridden or worked on a motorcycle before. I've just researched how they work for a couple months, and my plan with this bike is to ride it when I get my license in about 6 weeks. And before then, there are a couple things I want to get fixed on it. Some of them I have to get fixed, and some of them I just want to for the project and to make it a more comfortable ride. So in this video, I want to look at some of the electronics, namely the turn signal circuit and the horn. Let me show you how they're working now. So right now, the left turn signal is working on the front and the rear. The right turn signal, however, is only working in the rear. So I'm gonna have to look at that. The horn is not working, so I'll have to look at that. And one more thing I just noticed is that the turn signal relay, it's pretty inconsistent. Alright, so I got the turn signal relay off and just ran an alligator clip between the two connections. So now, when you flick on a turn signal, there's no relay, it's just a steady light on or off. And still, obviously the front right does not work. So this relay will need to get replaced. And I think I'll also actually need to replace these connections in there because they were pretty corroded. Anyway, it's just started raining, so I'm gonna cover the bike up, take a little break, and come back in a minute. Alright, so it stopped raining and I'm back outside. As you can see, this is where the flasher relay was attached. This black cable here, the black cable goes back to the battery, and the gray cable comes through here up into this big clump of wires, which comes out into the headlight bucket. And actually that gray wire comes out down here. So here's what happens here is the gray wire comes out from the flasher relay down here. And it normally is plugged into this gray wire here. Gray wire comes up to the handlebar switch, comes out here of this connection. When you turn it to the right, it comes out of this light blue cable, and when you turn it to the left, it goes out of this orange cable. So before I go even further, even though I know that my switch works because it works for 3 of the 4 lights, I'm still gonna go ahead and go through the whole diagnostic. I think it'll help me to sort of make sure I understand how this circuit works. So to do that, I'm taking my test light alligator clip and I'm going to ground here. There you are. Going to ground there. Then I'm going to turn my key switch to on, and I'm going in here. So again, just to remind you, it goes from battery to flasher relay through the gray cable out here into the headlight bucket, and then here is where it goes to the handlebar switch. Instead of the handlebar switch, it's going to go to my light. And there you are. So the light turns on when I go in there. So now I'll reconnect the handlebar switch because we know the handlebar switch works. And we know it's getting power now, in case we were unsure. So now I'm not going to continue with all the diagnostic steps for the left side because I already know that that works. So instead, I'm just going to focus on the light blue cable, which goes to the right. The orange goes to the left. Again, this gray wire comes from the turn signal relay into the handlebar switch, and then if you turn it to the right, it comes out in this light blue cable, which goes to this 4-pin connector here. Out of this 4-pin connector, obviously you get power in here, and then you get power out. One connection goes to the front signal, one connection goes to the rear signal, and one connection goes to the indicator on the gauge on the tachometer. Now for me, I can show you actually, my gauge works. Obviously it doesn't flash because I took the relay out. And my rear one works. So I know it's the front signal here. So the front signals are these little, these connections with the collars. Now, what's different about my bike that I'm just discovering is that this cable here, this collar, should be light blue. So already that kind of raises an alarm. Now, this isn't a huge surprise, but it's good to know that I've isolated just the signal and perhaps this wire, although I think the wire looks fine. So in the making of this video, I've realized it's a lot slower and more confusing if I try to film every single step as I'm doing them, because I don't really know what I'm doing. So instead, I've done a little bit of work on this turn signal off camera, and I'm just going to explain to you everything I did and where we're at now. So the very first thing I did was, this was obviously all put together, and I wanted to figure out if I was having a problem with the positive or with the ground on the circuit. So the first thing I did to try to diagnose the light is I put my test light into the all black 4-pin connector there. And so because I've got positive into the light, now I'm looking for ground. So obviously we know the frame is ground, but I was looking for on the fixture if there was ground. Now, right now, it's not lighting up because I also took apart the fixture, but when it was all together, I was getting light here. So I knew I had ground. So then, just to make sure, I took my test light out and put it on. I put my test light on the ground connection here in the headlight, and then I came over to the little pin there and saw if I got light. Now, when I did this, I did not get any light. So that's when I opened this whole thing up, and I opened the whole thing up and I pulled this out, and I took some steel wool and I was trying to clean up this connection. I even used some like fine sandpaper too. So after I cleaned up the point there with some sandpaper and steel wool, I routed the connection from that point out, and I brought it with some alligator clips back to the positive side of my battery. And then I took my test light from ground here and I touched it to that connection I was cleaning, and I got light. So that means there's now continuity through that little silver pin in the middle because I cleaned it up. So now I'm going to put the whole thing back together and see if it works now. Alright, so I got it to turn on. So now I'm going to just wire it back up how it was, which, again, weirdly it's an orange collar, but it should be a light blue collar. It goes into this light blue 4-pin connection here. And there you are. It was just a dirty connection. So I'm very glad I didn't have to buy a new signal. You need every light, including accessory lights, to work in order to pass inspection in New York State. So that means that, for one, the thing I was really wanting to avoid is the neutral light doesn't work. I'm gonna have to fix that. It means I'm gonna have to get a low beam, not just a high beam. And it means I need to get this running light working. I didn't realize this wasn't working. The brake light works only when you hit the rear brake. So I have to fix the front brake light switch and the running light in the tail light. So right now I'm trying to diagnose the issue here. So what I've done is, these are the 3 cables that run to the tail light. You have this green is ground, and I've just jumped that. It's normally in here. I've just taken it out and jumped it to the engine for ground. And then you have a green and yellow, a green wire with a yellow stripe for the high beam, and brown for the low beam. So the brown is the running light, this is the brake light. So what I can do here is, now that I'm attached to ground, I can take what I know works, the high beam, tap it to the positive side of the battery, and we get our brake light. However, if I tap the brown wire to the positive side, no luck. So these bulbs are dual, they have 2 positive connections here. One of them is for the brake light, which uses this smaller filament. Just looking at it, I can see that one of the filaments is actually broken. So I'm fairly certain that's the issue here. So even though I need to replace the taillight bulb, I still want to check to see if my front brake light switch is working. And what I found online was I could only find advice for bikes with the front brake light switch up here. But actually, doing a little bit of research, I realized my bike, this 1969 CL450, has the front brake line cable comes down here and it comes out here, and there's a light switch in the cable line, and so it comes out to a green wire with a yellow line like we had back at the taillight, and a black wire which I assume is 12 volt positive. So I got to figure out where exactly these hook in to the rest of the system, which I bet is actually in the headlight bucket. Let me take a look. And sure enough, down here, this cord it's real hard to see, but it is green with a yellow line. And up here, there is this cluster of black wires with there's one spot where I could get a plug in. So I'm going to hook those up now. Alright, so I got those wires connected in there, and now I can go back here, and even though, because my brake light's not working, I'm going to use my test light, but what I can do is I disconnected my green wire with the yellow line, and that runs into the brake light, the larger filament in the bulb. So where that was connected, I'm going to put my test light, and then I'm going to take my other end, the alligator clip on my test light, and connect it to ground, which I guess I can do at the battery, I can do that wherever. And now, well, I can't get it on camera, but you have to believe me that I'm clicking the brake light here, and we're getting some light. Now, we're only getting it when I do a half pull and then I do a full brake pull, and the light actually goes out. So there's something up with the brake light switch. Alright, so taking a look at the brake light switch here, I'm going to turn my key off. It's not so surprising that it's not working. It's hard to tell, but the wire is kind of mangled in there. See, it just actually is melting off. So yeah, those connections are kind of no good. See, the black wire just completely melted off when I pulled at it. Alright, I couldn't find anything online about how these brake light switches work. So to test to see that I'm right, I'm gonna first of all do the same exact test I just ran now that this is fully disconnected, to see that if what I did really did just break it. No luck. So what I'm gonna do now is, before soldering this, reconnect. I'm gonna basically jump with an alligator clip these two connections, and obviously this isn't the best connection, but it's something. I'd ultimately want to probably strip this black wire, but just to see if that gives us any more life. Rear brake working, front brake now. It's given us, it's way more consistent now. There you are. So now, through the entire pull of the front brake, whereas before it was sort of crapping out, now I get it just when I bring the front brake up a tiny bit before there's any actual braking power, it's on. And then through the entire brake, as I pull it tighter, it stays on steadily. So, looks like I gotta resolder that connection. CL450 is on, and there you are. Alright, so now that I know everything's working, I'm just gonna get back here with some electrical tape and alright, apologize for the poor lighting. My big light battery died, so I'm just on my phone now, but just off camera, I went after I wrapped up my new soldered connection to test the light. It worked for a second, and then I saw a spark over here, and now none of the electrics on the bike are working. So sort of panicked. I looked around online to see what might have happened, and then I realized it was probably that I blew a fuse. I must have touched my test light to ground somewhere else, and I don't know. Somewhere or another I blew a fuse. So this bike actually only has one fuse, and the way that I'm going to test it to make sure I'm right about that, what I can do is this. First, I can just regularly try my test light on the battery by connecting one side to negative, the other side to positive, and so obviously the battery has power. So then what I'm going to do is take my fuse. I'm going to connect one side here, one side of my alligator clip to ground here on the battery. This is what I just tested with my test light. The other side to one end of the fuse. I'll try to cover that up with the rubber a little bit. Then I'll connect my test light to the other end of the fuse. And so if this fuse has not been blown, then when I tap this to the positive side, the test light should light up. But as you can see, no luck. Alright, so last night, right after fixing the front brake light switch, I blew a fuse on the bike. So now, while I was at the AutoZone, I grabbed a couple different connectors because some of the connections on this bike aren't perfect, and I'd like to fix them. So alright, I wish I was recording that earlier, but basically I threw the new fuse in there, hooked everything up, which I think was on camera, but then I tested my front brake light switch again, and it shorted again. And so luckily I bought a handful of fuses. So I think what is happening is that in my switch up here, when I taped it up, I must have put those two contacts together, and they're shorting out up here. That's my best guess, at least for right now. So I'm going to take the tape off again, and I'm gonna tape them up individually and then tape the whole thing up again and try it out. So I suppose that's all it was, is that I didn't have each individual contact wrapped enough. You can see the factory contact has a lot more rubber left on it than mine did, so that's probably all it was. I'm gonna go ahead and electrical tape this one too, just so I'm safe. then I'll wrap the whole thing. Alright, so I wrapped up the green and yellow contact, and then I wrapped up the whole thing. So let's go in for a final test here. Front brake is working, finally. Okay, so there's a little short happening because I didn't fully wrap up my solder. Alright, so also at the store where I got the fuses, I got some new bulbs. I only need one, but they only sell packs of 2. The important thing here is that they have 2 connections on the bottom. This is obviously for the running light and the brake light, the big. Huh. Still not getting any light here when I... Alright, so something interesting is happening here that I didn't really expect. So let me take a look at that. I'm gonna reassemble the whole taillight because we know that once it has ground, it'll work. Actually turned the key on and saw that I'm pulling the lever now, pushing the lever. I'm not getting any brake lights. And I realized I have it on parking mode now. If I press this, there's an arrangement. There you are. If I kind of press this back, and it's sort of inconsistent, but I'm getting light, depending on... Alright, the camera fell over and didn't catch any of that, but all I did was put the lens back on and make sure all of my other bolts were fully secure. And now, if I go over to the ignition, turn it to the on, we get a running light. And when I pull my front brake, oh no. Alright, so this taillight gave me way more trouble than it should have. After a couple hours of watching it do all sorts of weird things and trying to figure out what the problem was, I realized the only problems were that at one point this bolt that gives ground to the fixture wasn't all the way tightened, and actually my battery was dying. It had been outside for a couple days and each night was reaching below freezing. So it's not surprising that it died. I just didn't know it would happen that quickly. So I got a battery charger and I charged it up, and now everything is working on the taillight. Alright, so the turn signals work, the taillight works. The last thing to check is the neutral light. So actually, I've already checked it. I know it doesn't work. You can probably hear me switching through gears, and no luck on the light. So there's 2 things to check. One is the bulb, well, 3 things I guess: the bulb, the wiring, and what is probably the issue is the switch down here that actually turns the turn signal light on or off. So I'm probably gonna have to take that off and look at the switch, but before that I might open up the gauge and switch out my turn signal light which I know works with the neutral light, and see if hopefully it's just the bulb, but I doubt it. Alright, so I got the battery back in, and the electrics are working again. So you can see here, turn signal bulb is still working. So all I'm going to do is put that bulb in every other socket and see which ones it's just a bulb problem and which ones it's a wiring problem. Yeah, so this is the running light. It goes to you can see a brown and white cord, and the brown and white cord is the same cord that goes to the tail light running light. And so what that means is, even with the key on, it's not on unless you turn your headlight on to low or high. But then there you go, it turns on. So that's great. That means the wiring for that works. What is that? Alright. Looks like the neutral light is a little iffy. I wonder if it just needs ground? Is that what it is? Aha! And again, through the headlight, you gotta turn the headlight switch on, but it turns right on, which is great. And it turns off with the headlight switch. So there you go, it's just like the running light in the back. So that's great. That means actually everything works. It's just a matter of replacing bulbs. So I'll leave this all taken apart until I get bulbs, and then I'll put them in. Alright, so I'm looking at the horn circuit right now, and basically I just connected this light green wire, which runs down to the horn over there, from this plug connection here, and I disconnected this black wire from this sort of cluster where this black wire comes in. So now on the other side here, I can pull the horn connections through. Like I said, there's a light green and a black. And first I'm gonna test the horn to see if it works independent of the button and the rest of the wiring. And so what that involves is, I have an alligator clip here. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to hook this one end of the clip to the black end of the wire. That's the positive. And then making sure none of these connections touch anywhere. Actually, there you go. I'm going to connect this side to the positive side of the battery. And then, if I touch this green to ground, the horn should go if it works. But no horn. So that makes me think that it's the horn that's broken on the bike. So let me turn the key back off. Take off the alligator clip, and I'm going to go ahead and run the rest of the diagnosis just to make sure every other connection is okay. But it looks like I might just need to replace the whole horn here. Alright, so I'm now on the other side of the bike to test the horn button. In the video I saw online, these connections were on the other side of the bike, but I found them here on the key switch side. So the way that this works is I'm going to clip my alligator clip into the positive side where the black wire runs in, and then I'm just going to stick my test light into the other side. Now, the test light now is in the same place in the wiring as the horn would be. So, turn the bike on and click the horn button. You can see when I click the horn button, the light goes on. So the horn switch is working and it's putting power into where the horn belongs in the circuit. Alright, so the horn wasn't working out on the bike, so I decided to take it off and take a look at it and see if I can't fix it. I think they only cost like 15 bucks to replace, but I figure if I can fix this one, why not keep it? Alright, so the first thing to fix are these spade connectors. This one just fell off right away while I tried to disconnect the wire, and this one is just hanging on by one copper thread, so I'm going to replace those first. Alright, so cleaning up the contacts and replacing these connections did not fix the horn. I just tested it, so the problem's definitely internal, and I gotta open it up now. Alright, so basically what happens in the horn is that when this coil, you can see there's a copper coil back there, gets power. This is like a magnet in there. And when the coil gets power, that becomes magnetic and it pulls this towards it. But then when this piece hits this piece of metal here, it breaks the circuit and the coil stops being magnetic and it falls forward. Then it does it again and again rapidly, and so the vibration makes the horn noise. So all I'm going to do in here is put a little bit of sandpaper in this little gap and try to, my guess is that that contact is just kind of dirty. So get some sandpaper in there, clean it up for a while, and then test it, and if it works, then I'll put it back together with this gasket so that dirt doesn't get in there again. Alright, so I feel good about how much I cleaned that up. So now, just to test it, I'm gonna put it back together, but not fully crimp this outer ring yet. Just kind of lay it in there loosely so that the magnet, if it does activate, will grab it and make a noise, so I'll know. Let's see. There you are. So I'm not going to crimp that yet. Let me just see if it does anything when I attach it to the battery. Alright, so I don't know that the negative and positive matters, but I remember the way it went. And I'm going to set it down, just give it a going to, see that, set it down here, just give it a tap. I don't know how loud this is going to be. Oh, did it for a second. Alright, so I ended up putting the horn back together and I couldn't get it to work. I'm not sure what it is, but I think I've decided it's probably not worth the $15 if it's going to be finicky like that. So I'm just gonna buy a new one. And with that, I'm gonna conclude the video. Just to review, in this video I fixed the front right turn signal, which wasn't working, by cleaning up the contact. I made the relay work by cleaning up those contacts, and I may still replace the flasher relay. I checked all the gauge lights and those all work, and I fixed the running and brake light in the back by repairing this front brake light switch. So in between this video and the next, I'm going to look for a new horn, a new headlight, hopefully brighter, and if I can, some LED bulbs to replace all the bulbs in the circuits I just fixed. But until then, thank you for watching.